Are you willing to fight?
Help us save the Oasis.
If you don't mind me asking, could you describe the moment where you found out your book was being made into a movie directed by Steven Spielberg?
I can. I was at home with my family, and I got this the phone call, and it was actually that he was interested, and he was going to read the script and then read the book and then decide if he wanted to do it. And so when I first heard the news, I was elated, but then I started to think about it, and the more I thought about it, the more I assumed he would never do it. And then I got really depressed because I worried that I would have to spend the whole rest of my life imagining what it would have been like if Steven Spielberg had decided to make Ready Player One. So about two very long weeks later, it seemed like 2 years, they said he had decided and he was going to do it. And that was almost 3 years to the day ago this month. And ever since then, it's just been a wild, wonderful ride. Everything that you would hope for has happened.
Could you describe the biggest challenge in bringing the book to the big screens? Obviously, there's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, well, for me, the biggest challenge, and I'll speak for my fellow screenwriter, Zach Penn, like the biggest challenge was taking the challenges depicted in the book and making them more cinematic in a way that also kept the spirit of the book. When I was writing the novel, I assumed it could never be a movie, and many of the challenges involve things that are not cinematic at all, like standing at a classic arcade game for several hours, which works in the book but would not work in a movie. So we needed to rework the challenges in a way that would still keep the spirit of what was in the book but make things much more cinematic, which is how we came up with the race. So those were some of the challenges, but also just condensing the story down, enough to build the whole world and set up the whole story. But somehow Steven manages to do that so elegantly. Have you seen the film?
I have.
Yeah, right after the title comes up and says Ready Player One, after the Oasis and the contest has been set up, then it's like a roller coaster ride all the way to the end. Yeah.
Were there any characters or brands you were dying to include but couldn't for some reason? So I know Steven didn't want many of his properties in there.
Yeah, but none of those, I wasn't too worried about not featuring Steven's films too much, other than the Indiana Jones films, but like Wade carries a Grail diary, in the novel, but that was a tiny thing to lose, and besides, you're getting a whole new Spielberg movie of references, so we don't need to reference other Spielberg movies in this Spielberg movie. But the main one that we couldn't get was was Ultraman, which is the Japanese superhero. But even that ended up being a fortuitous thing, because that was how we ended up expanding the Iron Giant's role, which makes me so happy. I'm friends with the screenwriter of the Iron Giant. He lives in Austin, where I do, and they never got to see the character celebrated when the movie came out. He kind of found his audience later on. So now that people cheer when they see the Iron Giant in a trailer, like the creators never got that before. So that brings me a lot of joy that they're getting to see him come back into the limelight.
I don't want to be too presumptuous, but there is a sequel to the book coming, isn't there?
Yes.
I've
been working on it kind of after we finished filming the movie and went into post-production. I was like, oh, well, if this movie does well, there's a good chance. I thought a lot about Michael Crichton when he wrote The Lost World. He knew after Jurassic Park there was probably going to be, so he wanted to write the novel first, and I did too.
Do you think it's sort of a franchise sort of thing, maybe? Or?
Yeah, well, I'd always intended to write Ready Player One as a trilogy, and I had mapped out the other two stories, but I was going to take my time writing those. But because this movie got made so quickly and I was so involved in it, as soon as I was, my work was done on the movie, I wanted to dive in. I had already returned to that world and seen Steven kind of visualize it, so it was easy for me to slip back in and start working on the next chapter in the story.